it's a process. It's not something that you sit down for 10 minutes. It's you have to be very honest when you look at your organization, look at the strengths of your organization, but be very aware of some of the things that perhaps are not as strong, and then build in some aspirations and look for results. So basically, for organizational strategies, it's what we're going to do to achieve our short-term and long-term goals for our organization. And they should be changing. I think that all organizations should be constantly looking to see what is it we have to do in this year in order to be where we want to be in 3 years' time.
This is Coaches Across Continents virtual learning podcast, supporting our 28 year-round resources for our community partners in more than 60 countries around the world. Today with your host, Markus Binch. Hello, and thank you for listening to Coaches Across Continents podcast channel. Today we will be talking about organizational strategy, and I'm delighted to be speaking with Nick Gates, the founder of Coaches Across Continents and my boss. And so this is now the 11th year, Nick, that CAC is impacting communities, governments, and corporations around the world. And this podcast can support you as an organization in developing a strategy. So welcome, Nick, to our virtual studio table today.
Morning, Marcus. It's always great to chat with you wherever you are in the world. I think it's one of the fun parts of CAC is chatting with everybody. And the first sentence I always ask is, "Where are you?" So great to chat with you this morning.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, actually, interesting enough, I just arrived in Berlin yesterday, and so we are quite close physically, which doesn't happen too often. So probably the closest we've been in the past couple of months, you being in England right now and me sitting here in Berlin.
But only for 2 days, because I'm on a plane to China in a couple of days. So yeah,
so we'll be apart again. So let's enjoy the time together.
The CAC merry-go-round as everybody constantly moves into new places and learns from some of our incredible partners around the world.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Would you like to give like a brief overview, Nick, what this podcast is going to be about?
Yeah, I think that just quickly explaining the purpose of today and the podcast is, as you've mentioned, we're 11 years old, and over those 11 years we've constantly evolved. And this year in January we had all our staff, the key people, together for a meeting where we launched our next 3-year strategy, which was built around core values and our SWOT analysis and everything like that. And it just seemed that there's so many great groups around the world that we would perhaps like to share our ideas with, and also learn from their ideas as they develop their own businesses and have more and more impact with the young people in their communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you have already mentioned some key words that we will come back to during our next 15 minutes, 20 minutes as we were talking. So could you explain to our audience, what does actually organizational strategy mean? I think we all have kind of an idea, because these words sound familiar, organization and strategy. We know it from other contexts. But what does it mean in the field that we are operating when it comes to like using sport and NGOs? What does it mean to have an organizational strategy?
I think as now 11 years into working with CAC, I think that more and more of the partners that we work with have become very successful businesses in their own right, and just following regular business strategy. One of the things was, as they've grown, as they've got older, and as they've learned, is to develop a strategy for their organization that allows them to achieve their aims. So basically for us, it was the actions that we needed to take in order to get to our goals. And that would include the type of staff that we were working with, the type of professional development we were able to offer, the type of business acumen that we needed to adopt to be successful, both from the funding side and also the delivery side. So our most recent look at our organizational strategy started about June 2018 and was announced in January of 2019. So it's a process. It's not something that you sit down for 10 minutes. It's you have to be very honest when you look at your organization, look at the strengths of your organization, but be very aware of some of the things that perhaps are not as strong, and then build in some aspirations and look for results. So basically for organizational strategies, it's what we're going to do to achieve our short-term and long-term goals for our organization. And they should be changing. I think that all organizations should be constantly looking to see what is it we have to do in this year in order to be where we want to be in 3 years' time.
Yeah, I think I envision now like this process, as you say, like you started and we as CAC started something last year in June, and then it evolved into something that was presentable and that was clear in January. Could you describe a little bit more what this process looks like? I mean, it's obviously you as the founder of the organization have some ideas, but then obviously there's other people, Brian, the CEO, staff members involved, sharing ideas. Like how did it, from your perspective, this whole process evolved in keeping also people involved and developing these ideas also together?
So one of our challenges, as you know, is we don't see each other often enough. We're constantly traveling, but we set up a system on Workplace where we could see what people were doing. We could see what people were saying. This, when I say see, it's all the key people involved in CAC, from our process consultants, our self-directed learners, but also our partners. So we were gathering information often in an informal basis and listening to what was happening with the market, both from the corporate side of things and the delivery side of things. And then we looked at what did Coaches Across Continents want to be. So we celebrated our 10-year anniversary by winning the Beyond Sport Global Impact of the Year award, and that was a key moment. But that was just, as we said in the January meeting, we celebrated for 30 seconds, and everyone saw the trophy, and then it's like, right, it's done. The first 10 years are now over. What do the next 10 years look like? And I think one of the great things about CAC is there's a lot of informal discussions going on. It's not that we sit and have meetings all the time about everything. It's just we chat. We're able to listen to each other and listen to our partners. And so that was a big basis to everything that we wanted to do. And then from the bigger picture side of things, we had to make some decisions on things that we'd been piloting about helping organizations that we're working with address UN Sustainable Development Goals and child rights and child protection as being key things to what we wanted to influence over the next 10 years. So putting all that information together gave us a starting point to develop our own organizational strategy, particularly built in for the next 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think what is interesting, like as you described, like how it evolves step by step, and like also a lot of informal aspects to it to develop it. And I think what I hear from you also a little bit the importance of organizational strategy to focus on this aspect in order to know where you want to go in future. As you say, like there's been 10 years history, but now you need to know, like, okay, what do the next 3, what do the next 5, what do the next 10 years are going to look like, or what do we want them to look like? How do you keep then still flexibility within that? I'm wondering about that. Like, how do you feel about that? Because obviously you also don't want to be too stuck in the idea that you feel like, oh, this actually won't work or something. So how does that work?
I think that's one of the challenges for Coaches Across Continents as an organization is we're not working on one thing. And so the adaptability and the flexibility is so key to it. From our side of things, we looked at 2 or 3 major parts of what we wanted CAC to look like, and we spent a lot of time on our core values. And I think the core values allow us that flexibility. And so we developed about 15 sets of statements that were central to all of our decision making. And so, one of the ones that I love in our sets of core values is if it's a good idea, we'll make it work. And I think that's something organizationally that we've been able to achieve over the first 10 years. And it's something that I hold very personally, of saying we've got to find ways to get good ideas out. And I think too many organizations, both in the business and the NGO side of things, good ideas are trapped because they have to go through a series of more meetings. They have to have the perfect ending, and good ideas are often just, they never get to see the light of day. And so those sorts of things on the flexibility. And I think that everybody at CAC, we work very, very hard that people's strengths, individual strengths, they've got things that they all own. And so I think that's a very key part to our organization, that we are able to do. Everybody has to do things that they're not so keen on, but there's also many things inside CAC from there. And another thing that gives us our flexibility is the amazing partners that we work with. They're not all working on one issue. And so we have to be incredibly flexible because we have to adapt to the needs of all of our partners.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Would you like to explain a little bit more about the values for CAC to our audience? Like what are the core values and how they come to life through our work?
Yeah, so the core values for us was based on what have we done over 10 years that has been successful? What are the values that we've held true to ourselves, both individually on our work ethic, professionally on how we work with each other, with other members of staff, etc., and how we work with our partners. And so we looked at a lot of different things. We looked at groups like Nike, Google, etc., what they were doing just to get ideas of what they felt. So this is different from establishing a mission and a vision in terms of an organization. It's holding things that are true. One of the fun ones for us, because of how we've been able to build CAC, is that we have a statement as part of our core values that A plus B equals question mark. It doesn't equal C. It's not a linear straight line, A plus B equals C. So we wanted to look at it and say, how can we see the world in a way that change is possible and social impact is possible in perhaps new and innovative ways. So I think our core values allow us to be innovative and not restrained by an organizational strategy, and not constrained by rules and regulations of what has been done before. So I was very, very excited working for probably about 7 or 8 months on the core values, and taking into consideration the type of people that work for CAC, our full-time people, our incredible community impact coaches, our incredible partners, and really designing core values that I felt really represented and reflected the Coaches Across Continents ethos to the world.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you, I also think partly also by thinking about the values, you might also realize something that has been existing within the organization, and you then realize, oh yeah, this is actually something that is important to us, and then you can express it, then you can verbalize it. I think for me, for example, since I've joined CAC, and I think that was also one of the reasons why I started to work for CAC, was this aspect that you already mentioned, with like to own things, like to have this freedom to express your ideas, to work in your own way. Like, so one of the things that we sometimes feel like is a challenge, that we don't have an office, that we don't have like this one place where we all go to. But on the other hand, it also gives us incredible freedom and incredible like opportunity to see things from different angles, to get a lot of input from the outside, to have this flexibility personally as well as an organization. I feel that's one of the core things that stand out for me.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that the organizations that are doing the same things that they've done 5 and 10 years ago are missing incredible opportunities looking at the future. And so that adaptability and that flexibility has to be changed. And it works on two ways. It works from our side of things, it works on the ground that social issues are changing all the time. And so we have to reflect that in our curriculum and the way that we're helping organizations build their curriculum and the training. But also from the business side of things, from the corporate funding and the government policies and things like that, you have to move with the times in effect. But I think that one of the strengths of CAC is perhaps not just moving with the times, we may be ahead of the times, and that is reflected on the partners that we're choosing to work with. They're ahead of the times as well. So we're trying to do things that perhaps people haven't even thought of yet. And so that's a really cool challenge. So one of the things that we all decided as an organization was to be the first group in the world to do an accreditation for the partners. And that helped the partners really focus on what it was they wanted to achieve with their programs, what they wanted to achieve in their communities, what messaging they wanted to send, what sort of workplace they wanted to create for their staff. So our 28 resources that we've been building over the last 10 years, that becomes very important. And obviously for us, a key part of our organizational strategy to set up that we can deliver the 28 resources to the partners as they choose to use them. So what we're going to offer is exactly what Coaches Across Continents went through over the last 7 months. We're going to provide a SWOT-R analysis form, and the process consultants will work with the people in the partnership program for them to identify what it is that they think are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, aspirations, which I think is key, and also results.
I would like to go a little bit deeper on the process aspect of developing an organizational strategy. Like, is there did you follow in some way a guideline, or how did you move through the process? Because you mentioned it was fun to work on this for 7 months. But how did it evolve for you? How did you move through these different stages?
So my background is I've always run businesses. So at university, I set up my first business called Play Soccer, which was an American soccer camp organization that, eventually worked with a couple of million children and all of those. So I've always been building businesses. When I was an executive at the Premier League and for Middlesbrough, my football club, it was to design new strategies to go forward, to potentially compete in Europe and all of those sorts of things. So my vision has always been in that way. So developing CAC, one of the things I think I was very fortunate about was that I didn't know what a traditional NGO had to do. And so I came in it just purely and simply in a way that anything was possible, that it just seemed these are the things we need to do, so let's go and do them, as opposed to, well, these are the reasons why this hasn't happened before or whatever. So it was fun from there, and I obviously rely on the Coach Across Continents board and close business friends to talk about this, because it's not just my vision, it's listening from every possible angle. And so what I felt was best for CAC, looking at the 2019 and the next 3-year strategy, was to really home in on our core values. And then we developed something new that most groups do, what is called a SWOT, opportunities and threats. And I just felt that was a little bit restrictive in what it was. I felt it was a little going back in time a little bit. So we added an A and an R, which was aspirations and results. So it became a SWOT-R analysis of Coaches Across Continents. And doing that was quite a surprise to all of us, because things that we potentially thought were positive for Coaches Across Continents, when we looked at it in a really analytical way, it wasn't that way. And I can remember a couple of things that I had put potentially into weaknesses of Coaches Across Continents at the beginning of the meetings, people thought they were our strengths, but then we really analyzed them. We went, actually, it's not a strength for us right now, but the aspiration is it can become a strength. So I think the SWOT part became very, very important for all of us to look at it and then help us build from there, because we were very, very honest and open and transparent of where CAC was as a 10-year organization, but also saying, let's not restrict ourselves to what we've done in the first 10 years. What can we do better? And sorry to answer a little bit longer, but that our strength had always been the on-field work, the train-the-trainer piece, which was the start of Coaches Across Continents. We recognized that if that was just the focus, it was restricting our partners because it wasn't concentrating on the other 27 resources that were available for Coaches Across Continents. So we made a brand switch to say what we need to do with the market is to have these 28 resources as being central to CAC, not just the trainer and the curriculum. And so, I think it was very exciting for me to listen to everyone over the 6 or 7 months of doing it. And then in January, when we said, that can work, or the idea works, but how do we make it better very quickly?
Yeah. And the SWOT, the SWOT, is that something that is used for businesses as well? Is that coming from the business world?
Yeah, from the SWOT analysis is a traditional strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's been around for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, but again, I felt it was restrictive to what Coaches Across Continents wanted to become with our organizational strategy and with our core values.
Yeah. How would you, now CAC has been around for 10 years, and you have obviously been part of the journey for the whole time, and some of our staff have been part of it for a long time. How do you recognize if it's time to update or to develop an organizational strategy further? Like, is there any indicators that you can look out for to see that, or how does it work?
I think there's certain trends that you can always watch. We, strangely enough, I announced last month to Brian and Adam that for 2020 there weren't going to be any structural changes inside Coaches Across Continents. I felt that the combination of all the work from all of our staff and all of our partners, we needed a period of time to really ingrain the 28 resources and the accreditation program rather than make any changes from there. I say that knowing that we are going to add another piece to really go much deeper into child safety and in the program. But I think that for us, we'd constantly been adding things each year over 10 years. So from Train the Trainer, 10 years later with 28 resources. In that time, we'd added incredible work about child protection, about women's rights. The modules have grown, everything about it have moved. And I do feel as though that right now, I think it's a great chance for us to have a 24-month period where we work with our partners to ingrain the new culture for what's needed for education outside the classroom and purposeful play and sport for development. But saying that, watching very closely what it is, I would imagine that as we look for as new things, we're already piloting more stuff around working on mental health. And so seeing those sorts of things. But I do think that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are things that our partners can develop in their communities that are very key, that have been identified by the United Nations. And so I think we have a responsibility at Coaches Across Continents to provide a service that's consistent over the next 2 to 3 years, so that our partners can feel confident that they can continue to build using our resources.
Okay. Listening to you, it sounds like there's a big aspect that is also quite intuitively, because you've mentioned a couple of things like you had the feeling that like things like on a place that you want to have it for next 24 months, that like too much change would be too much now at this stage. So there is a quite strong intuitive aspect to it as well. Would you agree with that? Did I hear that correctly?
I think so. It's also again listening to everybody of saying
Yeah.
we need to catch up. So the work that you've done and that everyone else at CAC has done as process consultants, we moved everything into the workplace system, so it's much more efficient. We have every 2 weeks a new resource available to all of our partners. Our monitor and evaluation has changed this year to catch up to what we do today as opposed to what we did 3 years ago. And so there has been a lot of change over the last 18 months. And so I do think that from a business strategy, it's important that everybody has the opportunity to learn how the systems can work even more efficiently. And again, for us, it's how our partners can use our resources in a way that they feel comfortable and that impacts their young people. So yeah, I think that it's time. I say that, but we're also professionally looking and saying perhaps we might need to change our brand name from Coaches Across Continents, because we're now doing so much more than we did 10 years ago or so differently. So how does that tell our story? So we continue to look at things we're never satisfied, but at the same time, I think that there's a settling in period when you make major organizational strategic changes, that you need it time to embed itself into your work culture.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think we're moving to the end of our conversation and this interview. And I would like to kind of take the focus from our listeners towards the resource that we will be providing together with this podcast. So possibly our audience is listening now to this podcast, to this conversation, and will afterwards look at the actual resource that we will be providing. So how do you think sharing this now with our partners, the resource will help them to develop their organizational strategy? Like, what can they expect, and what will the process be for them?
So what we're going to offer is exactly what Coaches Across Continents went through over the last 7 months. We're going to provide a SWOT-R analysis form, and the process consultants will work with the people in the partnership program for them to identify what it is that they think are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, aspirations, which I think is key, and also results. Core values, I think more and more core values become important for any organization anywhere in the world, to engage employees, to engage people who are working within the organization, and the core values impact the young people in their society. It helps also to tell the story to potential funders that the organization has a clear strategy, has a clear work frame, all of those sorts of things. And so those will be the key parts to it. We will have a little bit of work helping as well on the cash flow financial planning, so that one of the most difficult parts of any NGO and charity is managing your cash flow to understand, are we in position to be successful in 12 months? And this is also another thing that's very difficult, because funders want to fund for 1 year, but most businesses want to plan for 1, 2, 3 years, but without the cash flow. So hopefully being able to work with groups and say, how can we help you manage cash flow? Because these things, when applying for funding, strengthen the case for funders to give to organizations. So those are the things that we've seen, that a lot of our partners now are having success, because that they're able to show a really strong organizational structure, a business plan, a cash flow plan, core values, etc., so that funders know they're working with top organizations. And I think that we're very fortunate every day that we get to learn from the great organizations that we partner with, and hopefully they can use our resources to help them become even stronger.
Great, yeah. Thank you, Nick, for this great summary, and how organizational strategy also ties in, as you mentioned, with business plan and core values and the different aspects you mentioned. I think that was a great summary to also put it into perspective with other aspects of organizations and their work, and what makes them come to life.
And it should be fun. I think that
Yeah.
we embraced it at Coaches Across Continents, and it became a fun. It wasn't a chore. It was very much, we were excited of what we wanted to look like in the year 2028. So we bit off smaller pieces of 3-year increments and said, what do we have to do now? And in order to do those things, what do we have to look like internally, externally, etc. So it can become a very fun exercise, but also it's an exercise that it governs if you can get it where you're comfortable and you like what you do, it governs every decision you make as an organization. And I think that's been really, really strong for CAC over the last 18 months, and particularly in 2019, that we make decisions based on core values and organizational strategy. So it really helps us to hopefully make better strategic decisions looking at the future.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Thank you very much, Nick, for sharing your time with us and sharing your thoughts and the processes that you've gone through and that you have gone through with us. And yeah, thank you very much for being with us today.
Great stuff, and I look forward to working with any of the organizations around the world who are interested in this, using this resource to help their organization. So I'm very excited to hear what's going to happen next.
Great. Yeah, I'm hoping as well that a lot of stuff, a lot of information, a lot of interest will move your side. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone who has been listening to this interview. And if this inspired you to develop and evolve your own organizational strategy, please read through the resource packet that will be provided together with this podcast on your Workplace Partner page. And if you have found this interview on our YouTube channel and want to know more about Coaches Across Continents, please get in touch with us by emailing to info@coachesacrosscontinents.org, and you will receive more information. We'll be in touch with you. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.